Welcome to this week's edition of the Belau Report. I'm Jane Belau. We have a great program this week with two key legislators, Kim Norton, Representative, and Dave Senjem, Senator. And you're from two different parties, but you're very collegial and friendly people. And that sort of marked the session up until the end, didn't it? What do you think, Kim?
Well, I think there was a real effort to be bipartisan this year, for folks to work together, but it did indeed fall apart at the end of the session.
Can you say why it fell apart?
Well, I wasn't behind the scenes for those closed-door discussions, but I think part of it is there were just different wants and needs, and at the end of the day, an unwillingness to compromise over those key points.
Okay, David, what do you think of the collegiality?
Well, I thought it was. Actually, I thought in the Senate, and of course Kim and I are certainly in different bodies, and so we don't see what's going on in the other body except television clips. But in the Senate, I would say that, and especially I was impressed with the conference committees. The conference committees really did work pretty well together, I thought at least, and they took, we've got two sides. They took those bills and confereed them pretty well, and in the end, I thought we had compromise bills for the most part. What I think maybe, in hindsight's everything, but I think time management was a problem. I think that they needed to start, i.e. the leaders, talking about what we call the end game, maybe a week or two ahead of when they started, in my view. Had they done that, I think it could have all gone a little smoother in the end.
And now you're facing a special session to resolve some of the issues?
Yes, we are.
But you don't know when yet?
No, and it will only be when things are presumed to be in place with respect to leadership positions on the relative bills, and then the respective leaderships have to sell them to the bodies, and so the votes are there, at least enough votes to pass the bills. So that could take a while, because there's 2 or 3 bills there, that maybe 4 with legacy, that needs to be done.
Say to our viewers, we're recording this on Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day, and it's as recent as you're going to get this week. But we're really pleased to have you here. And Kim Norton, if you were grading your session this year, what would you give it?
Oh, given the end, I'd say we have to give it a C-. We got half the bills passed. There are a number of bills that didn't get passed, as Senator Senjem mentioned. The legacy bill didn't get passed, a bonding bill didn't get passed, a transportation bill was lights on only. But there were some bills that did pass and that I voted for, like Health and Human Services and some others. But of course, the governor vetoed several key bills, including education. And I might just mention, Dave talked about the conference committees. The last bill that got so much that was talked about so much at the end of session was the jobs bill on the House floor. It was one of the last bills heard in the Senate. I think you had 2 quickly right after. It came to the House floor with 2 minutes to go, and that bill had no discussion. Well, I was appointed to the conference committee of that particular bill, and that conference committee met twice for several hours. We did not finish the side-by-sides of that bill, which is typically what you do early on. You talk about what's in the House version, what's in the Senate version. We didn't even finish that process. We had some same and similars, which you look at the things that are the same or similar in each bill and approve those. We only approved a few of those. That conference committee never met again. So the bill that eventually was before the Senate was not a conference committee report. Right. It was a behind-the-scenes, decided-on report or bill that was amended on a bill that you had sitting on the floor of the Senate. So it was very, very unusual. And again, that sort of thing led to the veto of that particular bill, not necessarily because of the process. The governor was very clear. If I veto it, it won't be because of the process, but it will be because of the contents. And that bill had a lot of untenable content, some of which was not funding his departments properly.
So, David, how would you grade it?
Well, I'd maybe make it a little bit better, perhaps a B- or so, a strong C, perhaps C+. But and Kim referenced the jobs bill, and I'm just going to say we got that bill maybe about 11:30 on the Senate floor, and of course nobody had read it. 77 pages long, and I've only read it since then. And frankly, be honest with you, I just voted no. If you can't read a bill, or at least even in summary form, read a bill, I wasn't comfortable voting on it, and so I didn't. But again, to my mind, or at least thought, it goes back to this time management thing. Had we, and I'm not going to be too critical, but had the leadership gotten together 2 or 3 weeks before that and started working these things out, so the committee chairs and so on had targets, and they could have worked perhaps in a more orderly and prolonged fashion, I think we could have had a better end. But it wasn't the case, and so we live with what we have.
Well, if you keep going, you'll get as good as the U.S. Congress, and they pass bills of 8,000 and 10,000 pages that not everybody's read.
Well, yeah, and we don't want to go that way. I mean, I'm not going to say we read precisely every word of every bill. I'm not going to suggest that at all. But we have a chance to look at the bills, and we have certainly a chance to look at executive summaries of the bills to have ideas of what's in there and discussion on the bills. We did not on that jobs bill.
Okay, first let's talk about the good news. What passed and what got done? Kim?
Well, we did have a Health and Human Service bill that passed. I thought that was a reasonable bill. I know Representative Liebling felt a little differently about that bill. She wasn't quite as happy with it, and she does serve as the lead on that particular committee, but I thought that was a reasonable bill. I thought some of the contents of the education bill are quite good, but again, it didn't have in it what the governor was expecting and had asked for, and that's problematic. Gee, Dave, what other bills have we?
Just say lifesaver.
Oh, absolutely. Dave and I, and I think that was in the public safety bill, which was another bill signed by the governor, passed. I had some things in it I was uncomfortable with, but there was a local constituent who brought forward a provision or a bill that I carried and Dave carried in the Senate that ended up in that final bill. It's called Project, it was for Project Lifesaver, and it is has a bracelet so that folks with Alzheimer's, folks that might have Down syndrome, autism that would have a tendency to wander off will be able to be found quickly by the police. And so this was some grant money for police training, and Dave and I worked really hard to get that in both of our bodies, and in the end it was in the final bill, and I know our constituents very happy, Brad Trahan, who worked on that, so it was a pleasure to pass that.
That's good news. They also billed this as a Greater Minnesota session, and it was supposed to benefit Greater Minnesota, and when the dust all settled, it didn't much, did it?
I would say, and this is part of the good news, I think, as well, and Kim pointed to the Health and Human Services bill, which is a very hard thing to conferee. Just the enormity of it all, and you could perhaps not like that just looking at the costs going forward, but certainly money to rest or nursing homes was a large part of that, at least in terms of likability. That was we've kind of fallen short in my view, funding nursing homes, which are for the most part Greater Minnesota bound, and so that was, I think, well taken care of. I think $135 million or thereabouts. Another little provision, perhaps doesn't mean much unless you live in a smaller city, but within that transportation bill, there's money set aside for street improvements in some of the local small cities, and that's really important to them. But yeah, in terms of Greater Minnesota overall, probably not a lot yet, but we'll see as we go forward.
It's not over till it's over,
that's
right?
And I might mention the nursing home issue was an interesting one. Nursing homes, of course, are important to rural Minnesota, but nursing homes are across the state. They're in the Twin Cities. They're in all of our communities. So I think they're important for that too. So I'm not sure that was just a gift to rural Minnesota, but it did need some work. And the long-term care funding was not there. Long-term care providers are very concerned that the 5% increase that they had hoped for wasn't in there. But one of the outcomes that I've been made aware of with regard to nursing homes is because nursing homes have to charge everyone the same. When you raise the rates for Medicaid reimbursement, that raises the rates for private pay as well. So while we did help our nursing homes by increasing that Medicaid reimbursement, private pay patients or clients is probably another way to say that, they're going to be paying more too, out of pocket. So it has its good points, but it also has its concerning points because people who are living there are going to, in the coming years, see an increase in their private pay.
Now, is the transportation bill signed or unsigned or vetoed?
As far as I know, it's signed, I
Yes.
believe, yeah. And it's what we call a lights
Lights
on,
on.
so it just continues funding as the funding existed for the previous 2 years. That's basically it. That small
So-
little tweak on
So
small
you
cities.
still have to deal with either a gas tax or something in the future.
We'll have to do something
Yeah.
to look long-term at what we're going to do for our transportation system in the state. We have not dealt with that. In fact, you know, the expression kick the can down the road. We continue to do that. And I know years ago when I first got to the legislature, that had happened before. Transportation funding, it's really difficult for people to conceive of either a gas tax or wholesale gas tax increase, or one of the suggestions this year was all the repairs that you do on your car, those parts, that we'll start designating the sales tax from those auto parts as a designated funding for transportation. I have mixed feelings about that. Yes, it's a considerable amount of money, and so that does improve, but you know, do we want to do that for education? Do pencils and eraser sales start going and paper sales start going toward funding our schools? That gets a little dangerous to me. We just need to really do what's right for our schools. We need to do what's right for transportation, and we have to find ways to do that make sense.
Representative Liebling, at the end of the session, kind of lost it in calling for the speaker to resign at his press conference. That was the Jobs and Energy bill. And what was the problem with that? People hadn't had a chance to read it before voting on it?
Yeah, I think Dave explained that in the Senate, that bill had been at about 11:30, and we had to close at midnight, so they had 30 minutes to read, debate, amend, and pass that bill. That was done at about 2 minutes to the hour. It ended up on the House floor. We were not allowed to read it. We were not allowed to amend it. We were allowed only to vote on it, and they closed the board before voting was even done. And so you're right, Representative Liebling did call for his resignation at a press conference here locally, and as I've pointed out, it really is up to the body, the House members, to vote for their leadership. So that's really a decision of membership. And
Yeah.
The governor
Can I just
vetoed-
offer, these things happen. I could go back to 2009. Senator Bach, at that point, tax chair, brought a $1.9 billion tax bill to the Senate floor with 10 minutes to go, and we didn't like that very well either, I'll tell you that. And so,
Were the parking places underneath?
well, no, this was this year. This was 2009.
Oh.
But as we're recalling the past a little bit, sometimes bad things happen at the end of session. It's just a matter of time, trying to beat that midnight deadline. And that was the case this year. It was in 2009. It gets a little messy, and people talk about it. But I do think Representative Liebling, I'm not going to be, again, terribly critical, but maybe a little over the top in terms of her suggestion relative to the speaker.
But now the governor vetoed that bill, so you start all over?
Start all
the
over
Jobs
anyway,
and
yeah.
Energy?
Right.
we have the legacy bill, we have jobs and energy, we have education, and I believe there's one other, David.
Well, the bonding bill we didn't do.
We didn't do a bonding bill.
We did one, again, this is a 5-minute bill at the end of the session off the Senate floor, and of course it didn't pass
Didn't even
the
come to the
House.
House. Didn't even come to the
Yeah,
House.
so it didn't make it.
Yeah.
Well, you've got a lot left.
We actually do. When you think about it, actually do, and these are not easy, bills either. At least, energy and jobs. I mean, and the environment bill is going to be contentious. So yeah, it's going to be, and the bonding bill will probably get somewhat contentious. It needs, supermajority to pass. So it's not going to be an easy
So which
road
one,
to
the environment bill gets rid of the PCA, Citizens Board?
It
That
did,
is
yes.
one of the components, yeah.
And where are the buffer zones for the lakes and rivers? Is that in the legacy bill or the
It's in the environment.
The environment or
bill?
ag.
Yeah, it could be the ag bill as well, which is one bill, at least in the Senate it was. And so, so that will still be debated as well, I think.
But you can see
because
why
there
I
are
got to
remnants
the
of that
C-minus.
in the bill, right? Some of the high-profile contentious issues are still there. We had I happened to serve in the Judiciary Committee Conference Committee, and one of those was felon voting, and that was set aside. I don't think that one's going to come back. Of course, the bill was passed, and so on and so forth. So But the buffers and some of these others are still there to
What do you
talk
think
about.
about those buffer zones? Is it farmers against the hunters? Is that the
wanna go, or should
oversimplification?
Well, I mean, I don't serve on those committees. For me, I have a lot of environmentalists that live in the Rochester area, shocking amount of them actually, and they contact me regularly, and they want to preserve our water. And I think, it's a resource, it's vital, it's one of our most important resources. And the runoff from the farms is affecting the water. There's a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico that grows every year. And the care for the nitrates and the phosphorus that gets in our water can be mitigated a little bit by these buffer zones. And the argument is how big are the buffer zones, and when are they going to be? When's the law going to be implemented? And I think the governor felt he'd worked with the farmers enough to get something that was satisfactory. But then when it came to the committees to move it ahead, in fact, folks stepped forward and said we're not happy with this. So that was debated all year in committees. And David, I don't know if you served on any of those.
I did not.
Yeah.
But I actually attended a couple of the forums that either the governor or his staff members were at, the one in Owatonna, one in Austin. And I guess I came away feeling this. I mean, there's some property rights issues in here as well. And we all agree on clean water. There's no question about that. Even the farmers will agree on clean water, and they'll work hard to I think, maintain a clean water environment. But the property rights issues are real as well. 125,000 acres taken out of production. Well, okay, that's really a pay cut for a lot of other people that maybe draw salaries instead of grow crops. And so, it seems to me if we're going to do this, we ought to make the farmers whole in terms of some sort of reimbursement relative to perhaps some of the legacy money or whatever. We all want clean water, but maybe there's a price to pay for it.
And it should be pointed out, Olmsted County and our area does an excellent job already. We've been working for years toward this, and I think we kind of lead the state in already having done this. So other areas are affected in a tougher way than we are.
Now, do the conferees continue to meet on all of these different bills?
No, I think what you will find is leadership is meeting on these bills.
Okay.
So these decisions are probably going to be made, without a lot of input from Dave and I, but at the end of the day, we have to be convinced to vote for whatever has been negotiated.
Yeah.
It's a difficult place to be, I think. It feels odd to me.
And the bills really become null and void. You have to really build a new bill. Now, obviously, it's going to be built around the framework of the old one, but what we did prior to whatever it was, May 19th or 18th, I guess it was, that was then and now is now, and you've kind of got to start over.
Never shall the same
Right.
meet. All right, the legacy bill, what were the issues in that one? Is that where
The legacy bill passed the House.
Okay.
The issue came when it went to the Senate. I think you ran out of time, David.
We never saw
That's
the
it.
legacy
Okay.
bill, so that was the issue.
So it just leftovers.
Yeah.
And I think David's point of time management was a real issue in both the House and Senate this year. To have all these bills come with just a few weeks to go, with so much negotiating needing to be done in conference, it didn't leave time really to finish the work. It's unfortunate.
We have the Friday before the Monday, and the committee chairs, well, gracious sakes, even Saturday on the Judiciary Committee, one of the first committees to get a target, I think it was Saturday before we had a target. So now we have Sunday and Monday to put the bill together. Now we'd already started talking about it a little bit, anticipating targets, and so getting all the background and so on. But you don't start on Friday to end on Monday with these complex subjects, as many as there are.
As many as there were. Would you attribute that to lack of experience?
Well, certainly we could say that in the House. The leadership was all new, and it was a turnover. There's a lot of new staff, a lot of new young legislators. The Senate wouldn't have that same experience.
I think it just, one of the three needed to, in my view, stand up and say, 2 or 3 weeks before then, all right, we're running out of time. We just kind of need this leader to let's convene, and we got to start talking. And that really kind of didn't happen until just the week before, the final week, really.
The governor put his stake in the ground very clearly about what his priorities were. And what did that do to the fragile coalition of Democrats and Republicans in the houses, the two?
Well, Kim and I are probably going to disagree a little on this, and I go back. Governor Plenty would send you letters and say, don't do this and don't do that. Governor Dayton would, I'm not sure about the letters, I'm not in that chain anymore, but he's certainly very public. He said, I got to have this, I got to have this, I have to have this. I often kind of said, at least maybe to the local reporter, that maybe he should have run for the legislature, because it seemed to me he was trying to legislate more than just react to what the legislature had done.
Well, and I would say the governor was very public, and he didn't ask for a lot. I would say that's the one thing where I might differ a little bit with David. He was pretty specific about the things he really had to have. Buffer strips was certainly one of them. He was very clear about his early childhood and what he expected, and some of the rest of us pushed back a little bit and said, you know, and I think David and I might agree on this. I think I've seen your comments in the paper too. I'm not sure the Rochester Public Schools has the room, and some of the rural school districts don't have the room, and they're not quite ready for this concept of universal preschool. But they were very clear that they needed enough money on the formula, and I was advocating for a minimum of 2% in each of the 2 years to at least cover the cost of inflation after the last 10 years of budget deficits and cuts to education. That this, even when we hold steady, it really is a cut to schools, because inflation continues to go up, and if we don't give them at least the cost of inflation, they have to make cuts. So the governor mentioned those 2 or 3 or 4 things that he had to have, and the legislature leadership at least chose not to step forward and stick with him on those.
Yeah, in the Senate majority Democrats did not have universal pre-K in their education bill, which I think surprised the governor and perhaps surprised us. So there wasn't that real strong appetite for it. I wasn't hearing it from our superintendents. Frankly, I don't think from our teachers, from anybody except from the governor. So
we heard early in the year, pre-session, from the local delegation, not just Rochester Public Schools, but that whole southern Minnesota group of of superintendents, that they really were trying to still find room for all-day K, that they really needed money on the formula, and that was their priority, and that this idea of universal preschool was a new concept. They weren't ready for it. I don't think anyone would say it wouldn't be beneficial to children. I don't think that's the argument. I think the argument is, are we ready? No. We don't have the physical capacity to do it. Do we have a cry from it from our constituents? They haven't heard that either. And is it for everyone, or should it be targeted to those kids who are at risk who could benefit? So I think there was a lot of debate on that issue that we didn't really get around to that debate. We just didn't do it.
What do you think was targeting the governor's interest in that issue? Was this something that, as Lori Sturdivant suggested in the Tribune, it goes back to Rudy Perpich, and of course our governor was in that administration with that governor, and they talked about universal preschool. Was it the teachers? What was really driving this? That there are not enough parents at home and too many are in daycare?
I think we could only speculate.
I haven't had a chance to ask him.
No,
yet.
and I don't know. I even heard his former wife at one point suggested this was a very good idea, and he tends to listen to her on some of these issues. I understand. But the truth is, I don't know. Just thinking about it, though, and some of the little things, my granddaughter is in Grand Meadow High School now, but so I mean, getting on the bus at 5:45 in the morning, or 7 rather, that's a little early for a 4-year-old, perhaps, if they can even make up that first step. What do we do in the summers when school's out? We've lost our daycare industry, perhaps. Where do these children go in the summer? I mean, there's little things like that we need to think about too, and I'm not sure I've really, been thought through. Yeah,
I would say that David brings up the point that I was trying to make is this hasn't been debated or discussed. That's what's been missing from this, is when you're going to bring up something this dramatic of a change for our state and our culture. It really needs to be publicly discussed, and this wasn't. I would also say, I think Brenda Casilius, the Commissioner of Education, this was something that she's talked about, that she said was important for the children in closing the gap. So I think that's where a lot of it came. And I would also say Representative Murphy from the Twin Cities, this was kind of one of her initiatives, and she pushed really hard for universal preschool. And so again, as I talked to the commissioner, I said, do some pilots. You know, if the folks in the Twin Cities are clamoring for this because they're working, they're having a hard time making ends meet, maybe they don't have the quality preschool or childcare that they need, do some pilots in the Twin City area. Start there and then grow this out as there becomes a clamoring for it by the constituency. I just don't think we're ready.
Did Education Minnesota have issues left in this big pile of issues now to resolve, like last hired, first layoffs?
I think the LIFO, the last in, first out, I think that's fallen by the wayside. So that was not part of the education bill at the end, and it won't be in the special session. And
the Republicans would push for that in the House, but it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate. So I mean, I think Representative Norton's correct. It's sort of an idea that's maybe floated into the sunset for a while.
Okay, in your view, the biggest issue left on the table that should be resolved first is what?
Well, I think transportation. We went up there this year believing, at least I did, that in some form or another we're going to have a transportation bill, and we didn't. And of course, I could add a tax bill as well if you want to get to the destination medical center issue, which we haven't talked about.
Tell us about that. Right
well,
now.
It just got hung up. I wasn't there, but somehow, okay, no tax bill, no transportation bill, and so on. And I don't know who said that first, so I'll just leave it at there. But that was sort of the deal I heard, at least. If we can't have one, we're not going to have the other, and so everybody takes their candy and go home.
What happened to funds for the high-speed rail?
There was never a request for any funds for the high-speed rail. What we did have is Representative Raskowski try to put language in that would prohibit any discussion, any planning, and that's fallen by the wayside as well. I think Dave's right that Representative Davids, and he doesn't want to say that, I will, was the one who said, if I can't have my tax bill, you're not going to get your destination medical center language in. And I think that's really sad. That could have gone as a standalone bill. It could have gone in the jobs bill, which ultimately was vetoed, so that was what I was trying to work on, and that didn't work out either. So it's not controversial. Everybody supported it. We had no one say this is a bad idea or we shouldn't do it. So this will get done. It's just a matter of will it be in a tax bill? Is that going to be part of the special session? I hope it is. And if not, next year.
We have something in our Constitution called same subject. And in my mind, you can like it or not like it, but joining up, if you will, a high-speed rail bill to a bill that technically deals with how the city reacts to the destination medical center component called the EDA, Economic Development Authority. I mean, there's no nexus at all there in my mind. The only nexus is Rochester, and that's not enough. We should not have mixed those up, and we didn't in the Senate.
Okay, Kim, in your view, the biggest issue left to be resolved?
Well, I think Dave's right. Transportation was the issue of the year. We expected that to happen this year. I do think that will be tied to some sort of tax bill, and again, hopefully the DMC fix. But for me, education's always a top priority, so getting 2+2 as a minimum on the formula is vital. And frankly, I was very, very disappointed while the governor signed the higher education bill that we did not have tuition freeze for the University of Minnesota in there. We only had it for some of the MnSCU colleges, and I'm not sure it even hit both years in all the MnSCU colleges as well. So that's a priority for me, and I hope that'll be part of the special session as well.
This has been a fascinating half hour. What is your projection for the amount of time to settle all this?
I'm going to say that we need to get it done in a couple of weeks. I'm going to say mid to late June, perhaps. They got to work out the deal, as we say, and then the deal has to be agreed to by a majority, at least, of both bodies, and that's going to take a while. Not only to work the deal out, but to explain the deal to to the respective legislators and to get the buy-in.
Well, and I would say no one wants another government shutdown. While it wouldn't be a full shutdown, actually our parks are affected if we can't come to a deal by July 1st, as well as a number of, they're talking over 200 layoffs in education and some in some of the other areas as well, if we don't do it by July 1st. Can't imagine that's on anyone's top 10 things to do this summer, so I'm guessing we'll be done by July 1st.
All right, Kim Norton, Dave Senjem, thank you both. Thank you, our viewers, for being with us this week. We'll be with you again next week, same time, same channel. Stay tuned because this is going to get even more interesting. Good night.